How Blizzard are using Season of Discovery to tell retail's new stories. Xal'atath's Season of Discovery crossover. Now, guys, I don't want to toot my own horn. I know I'm pretty sure I know where this is going. I'm already gonna like it. I dropped a video about this 2 months ago. I was hinting at this 2 months ago. I saw this coming. I was like, guys, I think Xal'atath is jumping between Season of Discovery and World Soul Saga. Yeah, 2 months ago I dropped a video about this. So I'm not going to say I created this theory, but I certainly was an early bird to it. Let's see what Taliesin and Evitil have to say about it. If you ain't first, you're last.
Hello, Internet.
Right.
Taliesin here, and welcome to the weekly reset. Taliesin and Evertel's wondrous wisdom show in a week where we're expecting a release date for 10.26 this week. We didn't get it. We'll expect one next week. Maybe even some very minimal testing on the PTR. Although
this patch might just drop it. We didn't get any announcements or anything.
Not, and certainly nothing important. And that inertia of just waiting to see exactly what
Sam
the
read it off
pirate
of Reddit.
flag even means, and why the team feel the need to keep it so incredibly secret is strong right now, for sure. But we do have some juicy stuff for you this episode, because we always have juicy stuff for you. I make sure of that. I insist on the juicy stuff just for you. So our main story today is Juicy AF. We are going to look at Xal'atath, the apparent main antagonist of the upcoming War Within expansion, and her now undeniable appearances in Season of Discovery. She's back in Phase 2. It is now completely reasonable to read this as Blizzard using Season of Discovery to connect with, enrich, and possibly lead into the story of the next mainline retail expansion.
Which is very smart on their part. It's actually genius because in essence what you're doing is you're telling all the Season of Discovery guys, hey, you know this game that you'll enjoy playing, the Season of Discovery thing? It's kind of relevant to retail. Maybe you should pop in there and see what's going on. Maybe you should figure out more about this shadowy figure. They're basically creating, you know, a desire or these players to try out retail again. And if retail's really good, hey, you've got them double hooked now, right? That's a great idea. And by the way, this shadowy figure, this Xal'atath, I don't think it's another Xal'atath. I think it's the same one going between the two timelines.
Which is going to be incredibly cool or distressing, depending on your point of view. We're going to be going through all of her appearances in SOD so far and trying to get to the bottom of what exactly Blizzard are planning. It's going to be really fun, but before that, the news roundup.
This week saw the release of the new trading post for March, and I have some issues. Issue 1. This month's selection was billed in the Blue Post teaser as Green is Good, which I liked the sound of. A good old school goofy wow pun, which I always appreciate, and a clear message that the theme of this month's selection would be green. It makes sense. It's March, the beginning of spring. It's St. Patrick's Day, where Americans like to dress in green and get drunk because Ireland exists, and that's great. We love that. Green is good. There's no green on the trading post.
I don't think there's any real green items.
Aquamarine colored stuff with names like the Dueler's aquatic shoulder cape, the Vagabond's aquatic threads, and the Wanderer's aquatic trappings. There's the teal gown. This shit is about as green as St. Patrick is American. Like, come on. I don't mind, Blizz. I quite like all the teal stuff. I just don't like being lied to, and it feels like a waste of a good pun, which is the real tragedy. Issue 2. The Traveler's Log reward this month is a mouse pet called Teal, Not Green. Again, I don't want to seem ungrateful, and not every Traveler's Log reward is going to be something I care a lot about personally. I get it. That's fine. But I am reminded of what Blizz said about the trading post when it first launched, namely that the Traveler's Log reward would be the item that most players would have wanted to buy above all the others. And this little fella, it's not that, is it? Like, is there anyone who would have bought this guy over the Peacock mount?
No.
Or the Masquerade Transmog? Or the masks? Or the weapons? Or basically anything else?
Yeah, I will say, the rat, the end of basically Trader's Post item this week is probably the most underwhelming that we've seen so far.
I mean, definitely some of you would, and that's great. Let us know in the comments, Mouse Gang. But I think more than any other, this month's grand reward is the one that players will look at and think, oh, even more than the watch transmog.
If I get it, I get it. I don't care.
Yes,
oh, yeah,
you have a watch transmog. Remember, don't forget the watch transmog. I forget it all the time. And of course, going live a few hours after the Trading Post's cool free stuff, as inevitably as night follows day, we also got a new store transmog.
Yeah, I thought this was going to be a Trading Post item. Remember when we first data mined this and I was like, oh my god, we're going to get some Dreadlord lore and we're getting Dreadlord trade. No, it's $20 on the store. That's what it is.
Lord set that WoW had data mined a while back
Be a Dreadlord
in classic
for $20.
purple and green. Oh, the green is good. And it's great, apart from the goofy wings, which are the same goofy wings that came with the Dragonflight pre-order, which everyone agreed didn't really work out and were a bit goofy. And well, anyway, here they are. Obviously, this is a great set for demon hunters in particular, although you might want to transmog out the wings
get the
because
wings
they
off
aren't
your
as
back.
good as your actual wings, and the helm with horns that aren't as good as your actual horns that still clip through, but it's legit. But
World
it's a
of
store mod that costs real money. Also in the news this week, crests are now uncapped. Of all the gear upgrade changes, the community has been crying.
So true, Tidewell. This is peak WoW community. You get free stuff every month and they still complain. They still find something to complain about. Yeah, we want better free stuff. Give us better free stuff.
Now, this one was definitely in the top 10. I mean, what would really help unlock alt play in this late stage of the season is a higher drop rate of crests from all sources or account-wide flight stones. But uncapping crests is definitely a change. And that's a sentiment echoed on the forums, who were doing the online equivalent of dancing in the street with pure joy about their new uncapped currency. Sure, it might not have been the change they wanted, but they weren't about to stop that celebrating the change they got and enjoying every last moment of it. Poets wrote verses about this change. Bards sang songs about this change. And in the annals of WoW history, it will be remembered fondly among the very best. No, it was a shit show, obviously.
Possibly the most useless change imaginable. What is wrong with you people? This is a worthless change and you should feel bad. Another change where the problem is clearly the Flightstone cap, which people have been saying for months.
You know, the WoW community sometimes is slightly embarrassing. I don't know. I don't even know how Blizzard employees handle this shit sometimes. How could this turn into a shit show? I don't even know.
Blizzard only we could do this. Again, just like the lackluster trash attempt at the hero tree in the upcoming X-Pack, which Blizzard are yet again ignoring concerns about. How bad it will be.
Oh man, hope you feel good, Omni. Look, the main thing is people want this shit to be account bound. That's the main thing. I think people are really getting pissed because they want crests to be account bound. Warbands incoming, everything's doing that, and yet this crest system still isn't. I think it's pissing people off.
Saying they learned from their mistakes countless times while never learning from their mistakes.
Yeah, I think you could probably increase drop rates for crests and uncapped flight stones and make them account-wide at this stage of a season. I don't really see how that could hurt, to be honest. The season is essentially over for mains. Let's take advantage of this little content drought by making it as easy as possible for alts to get involved, I say. The last thing you'd want to do is not play much this month, fail to complete the log reward, and miss out on the mouse pet after all.
And so to our main story.
All right, here it is. Xal'atath, this is what we've been waiting for.
The War Within,
this is what we've been waiting for.
Season of Discovery. Because in my mind, it has now reached a point where in Phase 2 of the classic gameplay mode, something that we suspected was the case is undeniably the case.
It is all but confirmed at this point. I mean, Xal'atath has shown up multiple times in multiple places. She has, in fact, not only, given and interacted with the players themselves, but she showed up next to a damn crystal that was exactly the same as what we're going to see in Halifal.
Are using Season of Discovery to tell a story which is linked to the current events in retail and looks to be using it to add and lead into the War Within. We'll take a look at the evidence in just a second, but firstly, you may be thinking, who is Xal'atath? And if you are thinking that, well, obviously you didn't play Priest and Legion, but it is a fair question. And if we don't tell you now, then by the time we get to next BlizzCon, you're going to be very confused by the 20,000 Xal'atath cosplays that you're going to see there. So, we, the player, first encountered Xal'atath when she was housed in the Blade of the Black
The
Empire,
Beyblade, yes.
the Shadow Priest artifact weapon in Legion. In the Order Hall Word of the Conclave histories, we learn of the storied origins of the blade during the Black Empire itself. The blade may have been the claw of Yeshiraj, or formed from the remains of a forgotten old god who was consumed.
Can I just say Order Halls were a W? I see you said priests had the best Order Hall. Can I just say overall, I loved Order Halls. I thought Order Halls were one of the coolest things they've ever added to the game. There was a sense of community in them when you were running around with all the people who were the same class as you. I love that shit. Not for DK as well, because we technically already had an Order Hall. So ours was slightly underwhelming, but it was still pretty cool to see all the other Death Knights running around in there.
By the
We're
others
the
early
original
on,
Order Hall.
and we don't know if Xal'atath was housed within the blade at that point, but she definitely was by the time the Black Empire was defeated and the Titans took over. Because by then, we
Legion was
know
great.
that it would whisper to its wielders. The histories tell of how it passed from mortal hand to mortal hand, corrupting all in its wake. Of the recorded stories, one tells of how it persuaded Zando of the Gurubashi tribe to resurrect Kithix, the old god's servant. Helped in a huge Dark Iron Dwarf attack against the Wildhammer clan. There's a strong implication that it helped the Orcs take Stormwind in the Second War, and
I mean, she also had many cultists kill themselves, you know, in her honor.
Through another of its unfortunate owners, human priest Natalie Celine, it found its way eventually to the Twilight Hammer, who tried to use it to resurrect another Black Empire general, Zakaj the Corruptor. And that's where we come in Legion. Stop that nonsense and take the blade for ourselves. Defeat the Legion while enjoying Xal'atath's company and sexy voice every step of the way, because she's one of those voice-acted weapons. Oh man, I love voice-acted weapons.
Yeah,
and then
me too.
Drain the blade of all the artifact power that we spent.
What was the giant blade that came from? God, I hate to say it, a Sanctum of Domination. That giant blade that used to eat other weapons. I had it on my Death Knight. I freaking love that thing because it just used to talk all the time, and when you feed it, it would talk and say things. It was an awesome weapon. Yes, Jathis the Prison Blade. That's right. Yeah, that thing was badass.
Our expansions saving up
one of the
help
few good things that came out of that raid.
Sword of Sargeras in Silithus. In BFA, the blade has found its way to the Naga, which is weird because I'm pretty sure it was in my bank the whole time. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's in my bags the whole time, where it always is because I need it with me at all times, but whatever. We find the blade abandoned on an altar during a Naga invasion, where the voice of Xal'atath tells us about a big void storm that the Naga are trying to summon to destroy Kultiras using 3 other voidy artifacts, and with her help, we kill High Elf Inanis, who is trying to wield the Void Stone, one of those artifacts. Xal'atath drains the power from the stone, much like she drained the power from Zakaj when we first found her,
awesome.
and then possesses Inanis' corpse, to the delight of Shadow Priest players everywhere. Because, see, I told you it wasn't weird to be in love with a voice and a dagger, because now she's a real-life girl. That's not weird at all. We gather up the other artifacts, and on Xal'atath's instructions, take them to N'Zoth, where she offers them and us to him in return for her freedom, and then off she pops to Dragonflight.
Don't forget, she also left the blade with N'Zoth as a request by N'Zoth. N'Zoth's still alive, guys, telling you.
Where we just catch the briefest glimpse of her in the Void Portal behind Iridikron, after he tells us his big plan to beat up the Titans. We learn from his latest cinematic with Viranoth that he is indeed working with the Void and is planning on using their...
One thing I liked about this cinematic is Iridikron does show us that he's not an idiot. He does not fully trust the Void, but he says, I don't have to trust the Void. You know, all I have to do is trust its hunger. And I love that character writing for him. I do think Iridikron's a pretty cool baddie. I think he's one of the better things to come out of Dragonflight. And his relationship with Xal'atath, both of them agree that it is a relationship of convenience. Neither one has to trust each other, but they're both working towards the same end, and that's really bringing the Titans to their end, I think.
Hunger to his own ends. Xal'atath is also here confirmed to be the Harbinger that the Naga book in the Forbidden Reach talks about in patch 10.0.7, which says she gathers the children of the first flesh to reclaim what was lost, which we now know refers to Azj-Kahet, the underground zone in War Within, where she is working with the Nerubians. The book also says that that she speaks of a primal power that seeks the end of order. Iridikron, the Primalist, and that such rage can be bent to serve our ends. So basically, Xal'atath and Iridikron are both planning on using each other. A hunger lost to the ages will be reclaimed. A dark heart left broken awaits the taking. This refers to the dark heart that Iridikron...
So we originally thought it was Yasharaj's heart, you know, the one that... happened to be thrown into a giant pool and exploded in Pandaria, if you don't remember. But it turns out it was this item, the item that's holding Galakrond's essence. Yeah, so Garrosh was not going to be reintroduced here. I thought some Garrosh storyline might come out of the Dark Heart stuff, but it's actually this.
Goes on to recover from the Forbidden Reach and successfully empower with the essence of Galakrond in the Dawn of the Aspects dungeon. Galakrond was the biggest dragon ever and a very hungry boy. He used to eat the other dragons before vomiting them up and reanimating them as his own personal zombie dragon army. And that power is now in Xal'atath's
I don't know if they're going to revive Galakrond. I wonder if they're going to revive him or they're going to take his hungering essence or whatever and put it in something else. I just don't see... I feel like if Galakrond was going to get revived, it was going to be in Dragonflight. And there's no more story to be told in Dragonflight, so I don't know. I still am iffy on that one, Kate.
That the upcoming patch 10.2.7 looks like it will have quests about, entitled Dark Heart. Whatever happens in these quests will pave the way to the war within.
Still going back to Pandaria.
Is presented as seemingly the main antagonist in the features trailer, wielding the Dark Heart still. And that's Xal'atath in retail. Let's talk Season of Discovery. During Phase 1, you unlock the Void-Touched Armaments crafting system by recovering a Shard of the Void from the box. After you destroy it with light on the orders of a dead Twilight cultist. I know, stay with me. And when you do, you meet a shadowy figure who teaches you the Void-Touched crafting. And that figure just so happens to be a shadowy, she looks like a night elf, but don't forget, this was also the model used...
Yeah, they can't bring new models into Classic. That's like an unwritten rule. So, this is the model they had to use.
For high elves in Classic, Inanis, the high elf. And she's unvoiced in SOD, obviously, but her lines certainly read like Xal'atath. She persuades you to do something you don't initially want to do for reasons. Now, at this point, speculation was rife in the community that this was, in fact, Xal'atath appearing in Season
I had already
of Discovery.
jumped on the bandwagon.
But there were still some doubters, still some people who didn't think so. But then she appeared in Phase 2. In the new Nomragan crafted item questline, one of the items you have to gather for Ziri Littlesprocket is a charged Void Core. When we find a Void Core, but it's very much uncharged, our shadowy elf pops up again and offers to give it some voidy juice for us. And what might this assistance cost me? Nothing, of course. I very much enjoy cultivating mutual beneficial relationships. Who knows? There may come a time when you are in a position to help me and may find yourself feeling similarly altruistic. And you know what? This is a very intriguing setup, isn't it? We are now in a position where we owe Xal'atath a favor. And would it really surprise you if that favor
Imagine she calls on the favor in retail. She'd be like, you remember back in the freaking, remember that Classic time? Yeah. I'm calling you.
During the final Phase 4 of SOD, a phase that, by the way, is due to release just before the War Within. What will she get the unsuspecting Season of Discovery players to do for her? And will it trigger events that lead into the next retail expansion? Well, maybe, but let's be fair, maybe not. This is definitely Xal'atath, and Season of Discovery takes place in the canon timeline. It's not an alternative timeline or anything like WoD. Classic developers have described SOD as found photographs, as in stuff that did happen in our timeline, but that we are just learning about now. And this could be the Xal'atath of 20 years ago, as she was in Classic in the Blade of the Black Empire before we found her in Legion.
What they're doing here, because I've never been a Classic Eddie, but what they're doing here is the greatest thing to come out of Classic. To delve deeper into the lore, to use it to kind of create storylines that you wouldn't necessarily be able to do in retail. This is awesome. This is freaking awesome. It's such a W from the team to do shit like this.
She could be projecting herself into our consciousness from the blade, which is like safely tucked away with a Twilight's hammer or whatever, and her inclusion in SOD could just be a fun little reference. That would be cool. I would like that. But I think the evidence more strongly suggests that's not actually it. The fact that she appears as a high elf to us, so in the image of the body we helped her claim, and the
one we helped her claim in retail. This is how deep it goes. This is why it gets so crazy.
She waltzed off freely in when she was released from the dagger. The way the timeline matches up with the release of the War Within so well. The fact that she is the Harbinger, which literally means someone who announces or signals the approach of another, as in, you know, the next expansion. It just makes me think that this is our Xal'atath, who has traveled back in time.
Not another,
20
it's
years
ours.
For some reason. And you know what? From a storytelling perspective, that is absolutely
freaking awesome.
Wild.
It's freaking awesome.
I love it. If this is our Xal'atath, using the time ways that we last saw her in to travel back to our timeline 20 years ago to influence some poor hapless soul, make a deal and achieve some aim currently known only to her, and not only that, but we play that storyline in Season of Discovery, then that is some ballsy, imaginative storytelling right there. If this is indeed what is going on, I love this. Imagine if those Dark Heart quests in 10.0.7 reveal some terrible thing that Xal'atath has managed to do or get hold of in the past. And then we see how that happens in the final phase of Season of Discovery. And
That's
the final raid of Vanilla WoW, of course, was the Temple of Anchorage, full of Nerubians in Xal'atath. It's not hard to imagine right now that whatever Season of Discovery does with this might wind up being tied into Xal'atath working with a bunch of Nerubians in Azkajet in the War Within.
Shocker.
And we haven't even talked about what Xal'atath even is, because the two best bets to take from the Order Hall history is that she is Yasharaj, the unknown fifth old god who was consumed by the others, which would explain why she needed N'Zoth to release her, or just some other high-level void being. Personally, I'm leaning towards the fifth old god scenario as being the most likely. There are other books in the Forbidden...
I'm still not convinced that a Harbinger would be the fifth old god, because she is, she's supposed to bring, whatever is to come, and it just doesn't fit the definition of what we've been calling her this whole time. She's going to bring about herself? I don't know, but to me, she's that Silver Surfer-esque, I've talked about it before, where she prepares the world that she goes to for the Void Lord to approach.
Reached that seemed to confirm that there was a fifth, which could be laying the groundwork for that revelation. But, man, I love the idea that she is actually Yasharaj. I just think that would be really, really cool. He gave his followers his own claw to worship, and then when the Titans turned up and ripped him apart, the last of his consciousness and being still existed in that claw. And he, she, they have been growing and rebuilding ever since. Hence all the draining of every other void thing she comes into contact with. I guess we'll soon find out. After the pirates, of course. But make no mistake, this whole thing has the potential to be one of the coolest and most legendary storylines, and importantly, story deliveries in World of Warcraft history. And I, for one, am completely here for it. As always, we are linking to a bunch of Wowhead articles in the description which are relevant to everything we've talked about today, including Naifu and Season of Discovery. So if you want to learn more about anything we've talked about, you can in your own time. That sounds like homework, and it is homework. And thank you for joining us today. If you like this video, don't thank us, thank our patrons who still
he didn't even mention the freaking Hillsbrad crystal. The giant crystal that she happens to just be standing next to, the one that has to do with likely is the same crystal that is in Halifal. I have to find the image of it again, but man, that light crystal that she was just standing next to, if I do find the image of it, I'm going to pull it up.
All of our work happen. And guys, seriously, thank you. Without you, there would be a whole lot less Taliesin and Evertal. If you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. Remember, my name is Ananis. No, my name is Taliesin from me and Evertal and all the rest of us here at T&E HQ Star Kids. Cheerio.
Great video, and yes, I think it's very relevant, all the stuff that they've been talking about here. There it is. This crystal in Halifal You know who's standing right next to it? Or sorry, I should say, this crystal's in Hallowfall. This crystal evidently fell from the sky, as was described by the people of Hallowfall, and landed in Hillsbrad. The crazy thing about it is Xal'atath happens to be standing right next to it. This is in Season of Discovery. Very interesting that she happens to visit a giant crystal that fell from the sky, and yet here, the crystal that's in Hallowfall is described as a falling star. Yeah, very interesting. And the fact that she was there, I don't think is a coincidence. It's the same Xal'atath. She's doing some research, boys. And we're going to find out a lot more about it soon.